You are listening to an Honor Level production featuring the Resurrection of Marcus Mosiah Garvey series.
Welcome to Black History Month. For the first time ever, you are going to gain a special insight into the philosophy and opinions of one of the greatest men to have ever walked this earth. We are going to be celebrating a remarkable life and legacy over the next 31 days as I bring you the Resurrection of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, a series which will be presented by me, Jermaine Brown, featuring 31 brothers from the community, all chosen to resurrect different speeches from Marcus daily. Now, before we get into the speeches, here's what you need to know. Marcus Mosiah Garvey was the founder and organizer of the largest independent black movement in the world, the Universal Negro Improvement Association and the African Communities League. At the heights of success, the organization had a worldwide membership of over 11 million subscribed members. Now, this was an excellent feat, especially when we consider that this happened during a time of no internet, no smartphones, no social media, and in the midst of 2 world wars. Yet he dared to travel the world, even to non-English speaking regions, spreading his message of self-love and empowerment. This was during a time when it was particularly dangerous for black men and women to even wander outside of their own homes. But these factors did not stop the man in the movement, for he had at his disposal an unmatched confidence. He did not fear failure. He did not care about the laughter and ridicule thrown his way. For he had a fearless passion for the advancement of black people worldwide that fueled his mission. Now, I'm intrigued to know more about the mind of this man and how he accomplished so much and what I can take from him that I can apply to my life today. We are on program 10 of our series. Now, this speech was delivered in New York City, August 31st, 1923. It is titled An Expose of the Caste System Among Negroes. Today's narration is by Ras Kwesi, a native of Jamaica, via New York and Birmingham, UK.
You are listening to an Honor Level production featuring the Resurrection of Marcus Mosiah Garvey series.
The policy of the Universal Negro Improvement Association is so clean-cut, and my personal views are so well known, that no one, for even one moment, could reasonably accuse us of having any other desire than that of working for a united Negro race. The program of the Universal Negro Improvement Association is that of drawing together into one universal whole all the Negro peoples of the world with prejudice towards none. We desire to have every shade of color, even those with one drop of African blood in our fold, because we believe that none of us, as we are, is responsible for our birth. In a word, we have no prejudice against ourselves in race. We believe that every Negro racially is just alike, and therefore we have no distinction to make. Hence, wherever you see the Universal Negro Improvement Association, you will find us giving every member of the race an equal chance and opportunity to make good. Unfortunately, there is a disposition on the part of a certain element of our people in America, the West Indies and Africa, to hold themselves up as the better class or privileged group on the caste of color. This subject is such a delicate one that no one is honest enough to broach it. Yet the evil of it is working great harm to our racial solidarity, and I personally feel it my duty to right now bring it to the attention of all concerned. The Universal Negro Improvement Association is founded on truth, and therefore anything that would menace or retard the race must be gotten out of the way. Hence our stand in this direction. During the early days of slavery, our people were wrested from the bosom of our native land, Africa, and brought into these climes. For centuries against their will, our mothers were subjected to the most cruel and unfair treatment, the result of which has created among us a diversity of colors and types, to the end that we have become the most mixed race in the world. The abuse of our race was, up to 85 years ago in the West Indies and 57 years ago in America, beyond our control, because we were then but chattel slaves of our masters. But since emancipation, we have had full control of our own moral social life and cannot therefore complain against anyone other than ourselves for any social or moral wrongs inflicted upon us. The Universal Negro Improvement Association realizes that it is now our duty to socially and morally steady ourselves. Hence, our desire to bring about a united race should not be blamable to our generation, but to the abuse and advantage taken of us in the past. But that should not be reason for us to further open ourselves to a continuation of this abuse and thereby wreck our racial pride and self-respect. The Universal Negro Improvement Association believes that the time has come for us to call a halt and thus steady ourselves on the basis of race and not be allowed to drift along in the world as the outcasts or lepers of society, to be laughed at by every other race beneath their social breath. Some of us in America, the West Indies, and Africa believe that the nearer we approach the white man in color, the greater our social standing and privilege, and that we should build up an aristocracy based upon caste of color and not achievement in race. It is well known, although no one is honest enough to admit it, that we have been, for the past 30 years at least, but more so now than ever, grading ourselves for social honor and distinction on the basis of color. That the average success in the race has been regulated by color and not by ability and merit, that we have been trying to get away from the pride of race into the atmosphere of color worship, to the damaging extent that the whole world has made us its laughing stock. There is no doubt that a race that doesn't respect itself forfeits the respect of others. And we are in the moral social position now of losing the respect of the whole world. There is a subtle and underhand propaganda fostered by a few men of color in America, the West Indies, and Africa to destroy the self-respect and pride of the Negro race by building up what is commonly known to us as a blue vein aristocracy and to foster same as the social and moral standard of the race. The success of this effort is very much marked in the West Indies and coming into immediate recognition in South Africa, and is now gaining much headway in America under the skillful leadership of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People and their silent but scattered agents. The observant members of our race must have noticed within recent years a great hostility between the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People and the Universal Negro Improvement Association, and must have wondered why Du Bois writes so bitterly against Garvey and vice versa. Well, the reason is plainly to be seen after the following explanation. The boys represent a group that hates the Negro blood in its veins and has been working subtly to build up a caste aristocracy that would socially divide the race into two groups. One, the superior because of color caste, and the other, the inferior, hence the pretentious work of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. The program of deception was well arranged and underway for success when Marcus Garvey arrived in America, and he, after understudying the artful doctor and the group he represented, fired a bomb into the camp by organizing the Universal Negro Improvement Association to cut off the wicked attempt of race deception and distinction, and in truth to build up a race united in spirit and ideal, with the honest desire of adjusting itself to its own moral, social pride and national self-respect. When Garvey arrived in America and visited the office of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People to interview Du Bois, who was regarded as a leader of the Negro people and who had recently visited the West Indies, he was dumbfounded on approach to the office to find that, but for Mr. Dill Du Bois himself and the office boy, he could not tell whether he was in a white office of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. The whole staff was either white or very near white, and thus Garvey got his first shock of the advancement hypocrisy. There was no representation of the race there that anyone could recognize. The advancement meant that you had to be as near white as possible. Otherwise, there was no place for you as a stenographer, clerk, or attendant in the office of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. After a short talk with Du Bois, Garvey became so disgusted with the man and his principles that the thought he never contemplated entered his mind, that of remaining in America to teach Du Bois and his group what real race pride meant. When Garvey left the office of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People to travel through and study the social life of Negro America, he found that the policy of the association was well observed in business and professional life, as well as in the drawing room, etc., all over the country. In restaurants, drugstores, and offices all over the nation where our people were engaged in business, it was discoverable that those employed were the very lightest member of the race, as waitresses, clerks, and stenographers. Garvey asked, "What's the matter? Why were not black, brown-skinned, and mulatto girls employed?" and he was told it was for the good of the trade. That to have trade it was necessary and incumbent to have light faces as near white as possible. But the shock did not stop there. In New York, Boston, Washington, and Detroit, Garvey further discovered the activities of the Blue Vein Society and the Colonial Club. The West Indian Lights formed the Colonial Club and the American Light, the Blue Vein Society. The Colonial Club would give annual balls beside regular or monthly soirees, and no one less than a quadroon could be admitted. And gentlemen below that complexion were only admitted if they were lawyers, doctors, or very successful businessmen with plenty of cash, who were known to uphold the caste aristocracy. At St. Philip's Church, New York, where the very Reverend Dr. Daniels held sway and dominion, the society had things so arranged that even though this man was a brown-skinned clergyman and his rector a very near-white gentleman, he had to draw the line and give the best seats in the church and the places of honor to the Blue Veins, and the others would have a look in when they, by fawning before and humbling themselves and by giving lavishly to the church, admitted the superiority of caste. By the way, Dr. Daniels was also an executive officer or director of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. In Washington, one or two of the churches did the same thing. But in Detroit, the very Reverend Bob Bagnall, now director of branches of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, held sway. In his church, no dark person could have a seat in the front. And to test the truthfulness of it after being told, Garvey, incognito, one Sunday night attempted to occupy one of the empty seats, not so very near the front, and the effort nearly spoiled the whole service. As Brother Bob, who was then ascending the pulpit, nearly lost his balance to see such a face so near the Holy of Holies. Brother Bob was also an officer of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. On Garvey's return to New York, he made, incognito, a similar test at St. Philip's Church one Sunday, and the Reverend Daniels was nearly ready to fight. Now, what does all this mean? It is to relate the hidden program and motive of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and to warn Negro America of not being deceived by a group of men who have as much love for the Negro blood in their veins as the devil has for holy water. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People is a scheme to destroy the Negro race, and the leaders of it hate Marcus Garvey because he has discovered them at their game, and because the Universal Negro Improvement Association, without any prejudice to color or caste, is making headway in bringing all the people together for their common good. They hate Garvey because the Universal Negro Improvement Association and the Black Star Line employed every shade of color in the race according to ability and merit, and put the NAACP to shame for employing only the lightest of the race. They hate Garvey because he forced them to fill Shiladi's place with a Negro. They hate Garvey because they had to employ black Pickens to cover up their scheme after Garvey had discovered it. They hate Garvey because they have had to employ brown skin Bob Bagnall to make a showing to the people that they were doing the right thing by them. They hate Garvey because he has broken up the pink tea set. They hate Garvey because they had been forced to recognize mulatto, brown, and black talent in the association equally with the lighter element. They hate Garvey because he's teaching the unity of race without color superiority or prejudice. The gang thought that they would have been able to build up in America a buffer class between whites and Negroes, and thus in another 50 years, join with the powerful race and crush the blood of their mothers, as is being done in South Africa and the West Indies. The imprisonment of Garvey is more than appears on the surface, and the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People knows it. The boys and those who lead the association are skillful enough to be using the old method of getting the other fellow to destroy himself. Hence the activities of brown-skinned Bagnall and black Pickens. Walter White, whom we can hardly tell from a southern gentleman who lives with a white family in Brooklyn, is kept in the background, but Dark Bagnall, Pickens and Du Bois are pushed to the front to make the attack so that there would be no suspicion of the motive. They are to drive hard and hot, and then the silent influence would bring up the rear, hence the slogan, Garvey must go. Garvey must go. And the vicious attacks in the different magazines by Pickens, Du Bois, and Bagnall. Gentlemen, you are very smart, but Garvey has caught your tune. The conspiracy to destroy the Negro race is so well organized that the moment anything interferes with their program, there springs up a simultaneous action on the part of the leaders. It will be observed that in the September issue of the Crisis is published on the very last page of its news section what purports to be the opinion of a Jamaican paper about Marcus Garvey and his case. The skillful editor of the Crisis, Dr. Du Bois, reproduces that part of the article that would tend to show the opinion about Garvey in his own country, taken from a paper called The Gleaner, edited by one Herbert George de Lesser, and not the property of Negroes. The article in the original was clipped from The Gleaner when it appeared, and was sent by a friend to Garvey so that he knew all that appeared in it. In it, the editor extolled the leadership and virtues of Dr. Du Bois, and said it was the right kind of leadership for the American Negro people, and bitterly denounced Garvey. Du Bois published that part that denounced Garvey, but suppressed the part that gave him the right of leadership. And he failed to enlighten his readers that the editor of The Gleaner is a very light man who hates the Negro blood of his mother and who is part of the international scheme to foster the Blue Vein Society scheme. Dr. Du Bois failed to further enlighten his readers that he visited Jamaica and was part of the Colonial Society scheme. He also failed to state that in the plan, the lesser is to hold down the West Indian end of the caste scheme, and he and others to hold down the American end while their agents hold down the South African section. But now we have reached the point where the entire race must get together and stop these schemers at their game. Whether we are light, yellow, black, or whatnot, there is but one thing for us to do, and that is to get together and build up a race. God made us in his own image, and he had some purpose when he thus created us. Then why should we seek to destroy ourselves? If a few Du Boises and De Lessers do not want their progeny to remain of our race, why not be satisfied to bide their time and take their peaceful exit? But why try, in this subtle manner, to humiliate and destroy our race? We, as a people, have a great future before us. Ethiopia shall once more see the day of her glory. Then why destroy the chance and opportunity simply to be someone else? Let us work and wait patiently, for our day of racial triumph will come. Let us not divide ourselves into castes, but let us all work together for the common good. Let us remember the sorrow of our mothers. Let us not forget that it is our duty to remedy any wrong that has already been done, and not ourselves perpetuate the evil of race destruction. To change our race is no credit. The Anglo-Saxon doesn't want to be a Japanese. The Japanese doesn't want to be a Negro. Then in the name of God and all that is holy, why should we want to be somebody else? Let the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People stop its hypocrisy and settle down to real race uplift. If Dr. Du Bois, Johnson, Pickens, and Bagnall do not know, let me tell them that they are only being used to weaken the race, so that in another 50 or 100 years the race can easily be wiped out as a social, economic, and political force or menace. The people who are directing the affairs of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People are keen observers. It takes more than ordinary intelligence to penetrate their motive. Hence you are now warned. All the gas about anti-lynching and social equality will not amount to a row of pins. In fact, it is only a ruse to raise money, to capitalize the scheme and hide the real motive. Negroes, watch your step and save yourselves from deception and subsequent extermination.
You have just listened to an Honor Level production.
Father of all creation, Allah omnipotent, supreme o'er every nation, God bless our President, supreme o'er every nation, God bless our President. Guide him through life victorious, save him from accident, grant him his aims most glorious, God bless our President, grant him his aims most glorious, God bless our President. The tyrant's smile shall never, nor homes asunder rent, nor red, black, and green forever. God bless our President, nor red, black, and green forever. God bless our President.
You've been listening to an expose of the caste system among Negroes. Originally delivered in New York City, August 31st, 1923, by Marcus Garvey, and resurrected today. Now this concludes day 10 of our 31-part series, and we'd like to thank Ras Kwesi for today's narration. Ras, a native of Jamaica, is a scholar, secondary school teacher, poet, priest, author and community activist, whose main goal is the cultural and spiritual liberation of his people. Now Kwesi has done intensive research in the lingua franca of Jamaica. His poems have won awards and have been published internationally in various journals in the USA and Germany. He co-founded the Calabash, a journal of arts and letters, whilst completing his master's degree at New York University. His latest book of poems, The Lawgiver's Son, was launched October 2019 and is now available online via Amazon. Recently, he lectured in Manchester at the Black Child Agenda Conference on the importance of culture in education.
Black is you, black is me, black is us, black is free. Black is me, black is me, black is us, black is free. Black is us, black is me, black is us, black is free. Black is free, black is me, black is us, black is free. Black is you, black is me, black is us, black is free.
As you know, in this series, we are paying homage to Marcus Mosiah Garvey, as Black History Month is all about celebration. So join me to give a few shout-outs, starting with Garvey's parents, Mama Sarah Jane Richards and Pops Marcus Garvey Sr. We also want to pay homage to those esteemed ancestors who paved the way for Marcus to appear on the world stage. We also pay homage to the graduates of the School of African Philosophy and all of the founding members and supporters of the UNIA.
Black is free.
Last but not least, we pay special homage and tribute to his esteemed wife, Amy Jakes Garvey, who was a formidable leader in her own right. Mrs. Garvey kept her husband's legacy alive, and it is partly because of her loving efforts that we can share this groundbreaking series with you today. Tune in tomorrow at the same time for the resurrection of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, with me, Jermaine Brown. I'm going to leave you with the famous anthem that Marcus Garvey and the UNIA members had wanted to be adopted as the universal anthem for Black people across the globe. Let's take a moment to listen and feel free to wave your red, black and green flag should you have one.
Up your mighty range! You can accomplish what you will.
Ethiopia, thou land of our fathers, thou land where the gods love to be. A storm cloud at night suddenly gathers, armies come rushing to thee. We must in the fight be victorious, when swords are thrust outward to gleam. For us will the victory be glorious, when led by the red, black and green. Advance, advance to victory!